All right. And I'm Shannon Dill. I'm with University of Maryland Extension, the Women in Ag program. And we offer webinars the second and fourth Wednesday of each month. And very excited to have Jesse and Maria here to be speaking on building resilient farms and farm families. We are recording. Any questions you have, you can pop those into the chat pod. And with I do want to announce that we'd like to thank our sponsors. They're listed on our website, and as well as our collaborators for the program, which one of those is University of Delaware and our friends to the east of us. So I'll go ahead and turn it over now to Maria and Jesse, and they can get started for today.
Thank you, Shannon. And as Shannon mentioned, we're going to be talking about resilience today. And my name is Jesse Ketterman. I am a family and consumer science educator with University of Maryland Extension. I'm in the Western cluster of Maryland, specifically in Allegheny County. And my focus is financial literacy and health insurance literacy. But I am also a member of our farm stress management team. And I've been working with Maria around this concept of resilience. And so I'll let Maria do a little introduction and then we'll get started.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being out here today. As Jesse and Shannon said, I'm Maria Papidis. I work with the University of Delaware Cooperative Extension, and I am also a family and consumer science educator with a focus on financial management, health insurance, farm stress, you name it, I can do it. And I'm really pleased to be with you today. And I'll turn it back over to Jess.
Thank you, Maria. And so here our objective of our program today, you can see is we know that farm and farm families experience a variety of stressors that lead to disruptions on the farm, and that building resilience is necessary to reduce the impact of those stressors and to strengthen the farm and farm family. So in this particular session, we're going to share strategies that promote resilience and identify signs of stress on the farm. And one of the concepts, we're not going to go into great detail about it today, but in Maryland, what we've been promoting is this concept of observe, engage, share. And so when we're working with farmers and working within the farm community, we want to kind of be observant as to what's going on, identify some of those things that may be signs of stress, and then we want to engage in conversations with those individuals that are experiencing stress, and then we want to share resources with them. And so you're going to see that observe, engage, share concept throughout our presentation today, although we're not specifically talking about that. So just remember, observe, engage, and share. And so to get started, we want you to kind of reflect for a minute and think about a rough time in your life. And we're not looking for you to share that particular difficult time that you experienced. But what we do want you to share is, what did stress look like and feel like for you when you were experiencing that particular rough time? And so again, think about that rough time. We also want you to answer what were things that you did that helped, and what are qualities and traits. But let's focus on, what did stress look like for you when you were dealing with this particular difficult situation? So we're looking for a couple responses in the chat box, and we'll go from there. I can think of, reflecting back on kind of my childhood, rough times often came with the economy, which we're experiencing some of that now, where, how do you make ends meet, right? That there's stress associated with finances, and when you don't have enough money coming in to cover your expenses, that created some stressful times in our household and led to discussions around finances and that financial concept of wants and needs, right? What are those things that we need in our household versus things that we would like to have that we just have to put off for a little while. And so what did that stress look like for you? I can also think of times that I've been stressed and I feel it. I feel the tension inside my body. So I'm curious, again, what others may have in terms of what stress might look like. And then thinking about things that helped, obviously talking to others, having a strong support network were important things that helped. And then what qualities or traits were helpful in keeping you resilient? And that's that question we're going to look at today as we move forward. So let's kind of keep things moving along. So first we want to talk about what is stress. And so we threw a couple of definitions here. I think we can all come up with our own definition, but definitely stress is your body's reaction to a challenge or demand. Stress is that feeling of being overwhelmed or unable to cope with mental or emotional pressure. And stress can be the body's physical or psychosocial reaction to anything that threatens its physical, emotional, financial well-being or survival. So those are a couple definitions of stress. But like I said, I think we can all relate to stress, and we could all come up with our own definition that's going to be very similar to those that we shared here today. And so, as you know, within the farming community, it's constantly something, right? And we all experience these ordinary stressors, right? That we all have personal growth, development, health. There's things that go along with growing. We all have family dynamics that we deal with, family relationships. We have, depending upon whether you have children or you're caring for your adults, the stressors that go along with that. Household management, which combines this financial stability, specifically with the farming community. We have weather issues we deal with. We have to balance the farm with all farm employment. We deal with machinery breakdowns. And so, that desire to kind of build your farm and to maintain that legacy. And so those are things that we deal with within this farming community on an ordinary basis. And then we have these extraordinary stressors that create, again, additional stress. And so we have those years where there's extreme weather events, whether that's heat and drought or whether that's too much rain, dealing with some of those concepts associated with climate change. We have markets that are volatile, especially now. Prices are up or prices are down. The fuel plays a big part in that. We have tariffs. We have interest rates that are currently changing that create those extraordinary stressors. There's changing interest rates also impact the debt level that we have. And then you have policies and regulations that impact that, dealing with illnesses and injuries. And then, of course, COVID has been its own disruptor in itself. And so those are extra things that we have to deal with beyond those ordinary stressors. And so, as the slide says, it's constantly something. And we also have cultural issues that we deal with, right? And so if you're a multi-generational farmer and you have to deal with that, hey, we might have to sell off the farm. There's that loss of land, which also becomes losing part of your identity. The fear of letting down prior generations, the work environment itself is cultural, right? Farmers have a tendency to be more isolated than other occupations. Work days can be very long. Spring, if you're planting, you're planting in the spring and harvesting in the fall. You had that lack of control over the cost and the prices. It fluctuates. You deal with biases. You have to work with the family, self-reliance, and independence. And then because of all these stressors, sometimes you don't focus on your personal health. And so that creates its own set of stress as well. So what we talk about here is this farm stress load. And these pictures kind of give us a nice graphic representation of stress. And and what can happen as stress builds, right? You start off with the empty wagon, you have the hay piled up nicely, you're dealing with all that stress. And then next thing you know, you're just overwhelmed and the hay kind of falls off the wagon. And that's a good way to kind of compare stress and how stress can build up and what can happen when you become overloaded with stress. And so there's this concept out there called the general adaptation syndrome. And it talks about, different phases of stress, right? And so I think we can relate to this when we look at the three phases that we have a stressor that occurs. We have that initial response. It could be adrenaline responding if it's an immediate situation, but there's a thing called cortisone. That cortisone level is going to increase. And then you get to this second phase where, okay, the event is now over. Is the stress still there? Are we still dealing with things, or are we trying to return to that normal midline? But if we continue to have stress over a prolonged period of time, as you see in this second phase, eventually you're going to run into this exhaustion piece. And then, as you can see there, that's when you struggle with dealing with it because your reserves are depleted. You've been operating in phase 2 so long that you move into this exhaustion phase. And so we're going to talk about, again, how do we build up some resilience so that we can get back to phase 1? Because we all know that stress is a part of everyday life, right? And so we can't always control or change our stressors. So learning to manage them is important. And we have 2 quotes from Maria and Bonnie Braun, who works closely with Maria with a lot of this resilience concept. But stress management is necessary, right? We have to talk about stress management, but is insufficient for preventing or reducing the impact of stressors. And then you get into building resilience and reducing risk is necessary for preventing and reducing the impact of stressors. And so we're going to talk about that whole concept of building resilience as we move throughout our presentation today. I'm going to talk about observing what stress may look like on the farm. And we put that into 4 categories. We have the physical and mental aspects of things that we may see, the emotional behavior, the social and relational, and environmental. And so as you jump into some of the physical and mental signs you may see, these are tied into the individual, and you may see them visibly or they may be shared in conversation. And so someone that is experiencing stress may have headaches or muscle aches. They may have trouble eating or sleeping. They may be constantly sick, right? Or they could create digestive issues or high blood pressure, exhaustion, memory loss, lack ability to concentrate, and difficulty making decisions. Those are all signs, physical and mental signs associated with prolonged stress. Then we have emotional and behavioral signs, and these are a reaction to the environment. And emotional and behavior signs tend to be more expressive. So you're going to see those in your interactions with individuals. And there could be mood changes, sadness, could be anger, irritability, anxiety, loss of spirit, loss of humor, numbness, changes in their level of activity, changes in routines, changes in eating habits. You may see increases use and abuse of substances, trouble relaxing. You may see a change in work performance, difficulty maintaining and balancing life, and a lack of interest or a loss of interest in things that they normally would have liked to do. So those are all signs of emotional and behavioral aspects. Now, some social and relational signs. Again, this is the interaction piece. So you may see decreases in communication or increased conflicts. You may have conflicts with someone that you never had problems with before. And you're saying, what's going on? I don't understand. Can you talk a little bit more about that? relationships may be strained, and that can be from a marital perspective. It can be with your children, but those relationships become more difficult because the stress is managing the relationship instead of you managing the relationship. And so then you may start to see signs of verbal or physical abuse in the social or relational area. And the final area that you may see signs of stress is in the environment, right? And these are things that we may see both on the individual or on the farm. And so the individual's appearance, they may be more disheveled. Someone that used to dress, neatly and present a neatly appearance. Now, all of a sudden, you may see them not having their shirt tucked in when they normally wore their shirt tucked in. And you may see a beard when you didn't see a beard in the past, right? Those kind of things you may see in the individual. When meeting with someone, they may not be organized. Typically they were organized and prepared. And now all of a sudden they're disorganized and not prepared, or even missing meetings. On the farm, you may see fields not being kept. You may see equipment in disrepair that normally wouldn't be the case, or even neglect of animals. So those are all environmental signs that you may see on the farm as well. And so some of these signs of chronic and prolonged stress that you may see, again, ties into those 4 categories, but the change in routine, the change in physical appearance, the change in mood, the increased accidents or injuries, change in appearance, the decline of care of livestock. Again, these are all similar things that we talked about with signs of stress, but these are definitely signs of chronic or prolonged stress. Substance abuse, social isolation, delaying care, and then you'll start to see also behavioral issues. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Maria, who's going to talk more about the concept of resilience. Are you ready, Maria?
I'm ready. I guess before I kind of jump into all of this, I'm wondering from our participants, have you seen neighbors or friends who have experienced some of those signs that Jesse just shared? I know I have, especially over COVID. What are some of the things that you saw? And feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like. We have a quiet group today. I noticed a lot of those signs and symptoms, maybe not as apparent because we haven't really been in person as Anne says, we haven't seen each other. We haven't been able to see each other. So, but I think some of it too is people are, concerned about their own health, but in that lack of socializing, we tend to get, more focused on our own stuff. And for some people, that's great. They can use it and get more done. And for others, it can be lonely and isolating and can create some sadness. So I'm really encouraging people to reach out, even if it's texting or phone calling, connecting with people and just trying to share your wonderfulness with others because people need it. So I am going to talk now a little bit about resilience because it's such an important concept. We hear the word a lot, and yet oftentimes we don't necessarily think about what does that mean? And what are those characteristics that help us be resilient? And so the way I think about resilience is that resource. It's the thing that we have, or the ability that we have that helps us be resilient. So maybe it's a savings account, right? I have that tool when I need it. Or maybe it's my extroverted personality, and I love to talk to people, but that is a characteristic of me that engages people and tries to lift them up, right? So that's a resilience, is that tool, or that tool that we have in our tool bag. Whereas resiliency is some of the skills, right, that we have. So do we bounce back? Are we good problem solvers? Do we like to communicate? And it helps, do we have a big support network, and we cultivate that, and we have that. So those are some of the skills that people have. Resiliency is sort of those skills that we have that can help us recover or mitigate situations. And up on the screen is this idea of resiliency thinking. And so resiliency thinking is that ability to anticipate stressors, or to use those stressors or disturbances or disruptions or those events, right, to create new opportunities, maybe some innovative thinking, I call it drop back 10 and punt, right? You kind of like go, oh my goodness, this thing happened, how can I use this to my advantage, right? So I offer that to you because I think we all do it. We just don't think about that we do it. And yet, if we think about how we do it, we can get better at it. So some of the abilities related to resilience and resiliency thinking is this notion of being able to come up with realistic plans, and kind of reflecting and reframing problems into lessons, and not just for yourself, but other people that you're interacting with. Like oftentimes I see farmers, looking at things and they go, oh, well, that happened and that's terrible, but hey, this gives me the opportunity to do something else. But they may not share that thinking with their family or friends. And so their family or friends might be going, oh my gosh, poor Maria, I can't believe she went through that again. And they have no idea that I'm already like, whew, I'm on it. I can make things better. So sharing that with people, and how you're going to reframe a problem into a lesson, and engaging them so that they not only that they understand the change that could happen and how they can help. Being able to identify resources and using them effectively, that's really important. And I think sometimes we get very narrow focus. This is what I have. And sometimes we need to turn to our neighbor and go, can you help? Or do you know someone who could help? And so expanding our resources that can really help us solve problems better. Seeking out new information, and that may be from your very friendly extension educator, but it might be other agencies, it might be Farm Bureau, it might be other people in your circles, or maybe at church, right? Talking about the problems you're trying to solve and seeking out information about that. One of the things, though, I really try to encourage people to do is look at trusted resources. And so if you're going online, look at websites that have like .edu after them or .gov after them, right? So that they're trusted science-based information. And then identifying individuals or organizations who can really help provide support. And again, that kind of circles back around to, who do you know, who's in your network, how can they help you connect to those organizations that can support you. Okay, next slide. So how do we build resilience? These are some of those abilities that we can, again, kind of cultivate, as I mentioned before. Being able to carry out plans, being able to manage your feelings and impulses in a helpful manner. I know sometimes we get so frustrated and angry or sad, and that kind of ekes out, and it may impact the people around us. And we don't often know how it impacts the people around us. And so I think it's oftentimes really important to revisit, like, it's okay to feel those feelings. Absolutely. I'm not saying don't feel the feelings, but I'm also saying, your feelings change, right? So you might be mad and frustrated and angry right now, or sad and depressed right now. But after you come to some thinking about, reflecting on some things, those feelings might change. So help people know your process. And so that means communication, right? And to feel okay about communicating those feelings or your thinking processes, or the strategies that you want to use. So it's important to keep people in the loop around what's going on and problem solve together. And then having confidence in your strengths and skills. This is really so important because, we're all good at things. We may not be good at everything, but we're all good at things. And so it's really important to have confidence in your own. And it's okay to say, you know what, I'm not really good at that, but I could use your help because I know you're good at that. So what can we do together? And build each other's confidence by working together. Having good problem solving skills, that's important. And, I swear, I have a sister who is terrible at problem solving. Terrible. She just has a hard time gathering the right pieces of information and putting together a reasonable solution. It's usually a very far-fetched solution. And so, we've come to a place as sisters, right, where we can talk, and I help her with that. And I can do it in a way that doesn't make her feel dumb or silly or, whatever, I just ask questions, right? What do you think will happen if you do that, right? What do you think? Well, what's the consequence? What's the short-term consequence? What's the long-term consequence? What are you willing to trade off, right? I mean, those are the kinds of questions I ask as a sister to get her to kind of think through situations to produce some good problem solving. So you can play that role too with yourself, right? But also with others. And then this last one, working for a higher purpose. I really feel like this is important because this is what can ground you. Life might be going crazy all around you, but if you can kind of connect into what's important, what you value, and help use those things as a way to guide through the craziness or through the situation. So important in terms of building resilience. And sharing, again, need to share it, right? I want to do it this way because this is what's important to me or to us or to our family. And especially if you have young kids, you need to bring them on board and help them understand, why is it that you're making the decisions you're making? And what is it that you're valuing so that they can learn about them, support them, and articulate them for themselves. All right, next slide. So in all of the research that I've been doing, as I looked at what are those characteristics, resilience characteristics of people and also families, and then what are those skills, right? This is that list, right? It's a short list, a condensed list. But take a look at this and just, maybe write in the chat, what are some of these characteristics or skills that you find most helpful when you're in, say, a difficult place, either for yourself or for those people that you might interact with. So I shared the story of my sister, right? So I'm really good at problem solving. She's really good at communicating, and that social interactiveness piece, right? And so oftentimes we support one another, right? I'm really good at the problem solving, but she might say to me, Maria, hey, who else have you talked to about this? There's these other resources out there that you might consider connecting with. So what are some of the ones you've worked with? Thanks, Anne. Yeah, social interaction, getting feedback from people or ideas from people is great. Thanks, Anne. I think for me too, personally, I learn a lot from experiences. So I might be in the throes of something and trying to problem solve, but I oftentimes afterwards think back and go, hey, that worked, or no, that didn't work. And kind of park that, right? So that as I move forward and maybe try and come into a situation again, I can kind of think back to, did that work or did that not work? How might I do things a little bit differently? I think another big piece here is that practicing healthy coping skills. And that gets back to what Jesse was saying about how do we handle stress, either emotionally or physically, and or socially, right? How do we handle, communication when we're upset or depressed or angry? I think that's really important. It sets the stage not only for oneself, but for all those people that you're interacting. And so, whether you're doing things to keep yourself calm or, physical activity to kind of keep your body regulated, understanding what are those things that are going to help you stay kind of out of stress mode is really important. Because there is research that says, when you're stressed, you don't make good decisions. And so it's really important to kind of figure out how do you get yourself in a place where you can make good decisions. And part of that is that healthy coping strategies. All right, next slide. So here are some resilience strategies. You may have seen some of these in sort of stress management types of programs too, but one very effective short-term strategy to build resilience and kind of cope well is this idea of deep breathing. You're trying to calm your mind, so you're deep breathing or meditating or self-talk. And by self-talk, it's not, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot, I can't believe I did this, blah, blah, blah. It's, no, I'm a confident person. I'm confident, I'm competent, I'm capable, right? It's reframing the way we oftentimes talk to ourselves. This idea of relaxing your muscles, to maybe doing some simple stretches, listening to soothing music, taking a walk, all of those things that kind of, that mind-body connection that can really be helpful to kind of like calm down, calm yourself down. So what are some of the things you do, right? What do you do to kind of calm your mind? I have to say, one of the things I've been doing lately is I love Spanish guitar music. And so I've been listening to Spanish guitar music, just no words, just the beautiful, oh my gosh, it just takes me to a different place, right? It's lovely. So one of the other things on this slide is a really important tool. And then I swear I've been using it a lot over the last few years, is this calming breath process, deep breathing process. And so it's this idea of inhaling for 4 seconds, so slowly inhaling for 4 seconds, holding it for 4 seconds, holding your breath, exhaling for 4 seconds, and then holding that exhale for 4 seconds. and repeating this several times. And what does this do? It really, it sends a message to your whole body, your brain, your body, your muscles, your lymph system, which is the thing that's sending out all of those hormones that causes the stress and the reaction in your body. So by doing this kind of simple exercise, everything calms down and you can begin to sort of like get back into your body, get back into your mind, and then be able to move forward in a calmer state. So I encourage you to try it. Do it several times when you need to. And there's lots of other techniques that you can use too, but this one is a good one, simple. Thanks, Jesse. All right. So what are some of those long-term things that we can do that can really help build resiliency strategies over time? And so, we've heard these before, but it's so important. The research is really saying this is what you need to do. So you need to connect with people in your social network. And if you don't have a social network, you need to start building some. It doesn't have to be a huge social network. Like I tend to think of network and think hundreds of people. No, it can be 5 really awesome friends, right? Or family members. But connecting with them, sharing with them, communicating with them on an ongoing basis, really important. Exercise, staying healthy are key pieces here. And so that means eating correctly, right? It means doing activities that aren't just work, right? We all know we burn calories when we do our farm work, right? When I'm out weeding, I'm burning calories. That's not what this is about, although it can help. But it's also about doing something for yourself, recognizing the importance of you and the kinds of things that you can do for yourself. So staying healthy, seeking a routine, that is a great way to manage, right? All of the information is data that's coming your way. So seek a routine, going to bed at the same time, having breakfast at the same time, handling emails at the same time, those kinds of things. Find practical ways to relax. And that doesn't mean playing games on your computer or your phone or watching television. Those can happen sometimes. They can distract us, but they don't really have the same calming effect, right? That reading a book does or taking a walk does. And then certainly speak with your doctor or a mental health professional if you're finding that you're having a hard time coping. All right, so the next thing we wanted to do is introduce this managing personal and family challenges resiliently worksheet. And it is a tool that you can use to really explore resilient thinking and doing, both for yourself or in your family unit or in your farm enterprise unit, your work team, to really begin to think about how to implement kind of resiliency thinking in your work. So go to the next slide. This is what the whole thing looks like. And so now we're going to kind of look at it in each of its pieces. And so part of the first thing we need to think about is like, what's the dream, right? Where do you want to get to? Or what's the challenge you're trying to address? And sometimes they're interconnected, right? And so the dream can certainly help prioritize solutions to addressing whatever challenge that you're trying to face. But the challenge can also help motivate action to achieving the dream. So, one of the things that's really important to recognize is if it stays in the dream state, it's not going to happen. You got to connect it back to reality, right? You got to connect it back to action steps. And so that's where kind of the next set of slides helps us clarify what those are. So another key piece to being resilient is understanding your belief systems. And especially when you're in a family or in a farm team, it's important to talk about those things. And so these sets of questions that's on the worksheet helps you do that, right? How does this challenge, what does it mean to us or me, right? Is the challenge a threat or an opportunity? Why and how? What strengths do I and my family or farm team members have that can address this? What might we need to learn so we can better address it? How can we create a can-do attitude? What can we create together? So you can see these are all very positive ways of reflecting on something that might be a challenge or even a dream, right? You can how do you make this dream come true, right? These are the same kinds of questions you need to ask. So belief systems is one piece. The next piece is about organizational processes and strategies. And so these questions really get you to think about, well, what resources do we have? How do we create a good support system? Who else needs to be on our team? Who can we invite to get information so that we can make good decisions? What are the risk management strategies that need to be put in place or updated? How do we enhance our financial security and balance our life and work? Oftentimes that's the challenge, but it's important as we're coming up with solutions that we're taking that into account. And then whose role and which rules need to be adjusted to help address the challenge? So who's going to do what, and how do we communicate, or what rules need to be put in place so that things can happen in a timely way? And then lastly, communication, right? And that really can help with the problem solving. I don't know how many times I've worked with individuals or families, and the problem can't be solved because the communication isn't happening. Because each individual in the family or the farm unit isn't talking to one another or sharing important information that needs to be shared so that a collective solution can be created. And so these questions get at some of that, right? What can we do to support clear, consistent information sharing, right? And I know in our ag communities, we talk about family meetings, right? Or farm meetings that kind of focus on the farm business and the types of things that need to be done to keep the business moving forward. How do we create a good environment for open sharing and, of those values, of the things that are important to us, of our feelings? What can we learn from the previous setbacks that can help us? What new ideas or resources can we brainstorm? And then what process can we put in place to actually make a decision? I know many times families and individuals or teams get to a standstill because there's differences in opinion. So is there a process that can be put in place before any decision even needs to be made so that everybody knows what the rules are? That can be a really effective way to address stalemates. I'll just call them stalemates in decision making. So once you've kind of done all of those things and talked through those things, it's about making a plan and taking some action steps. And again, it's sort of like small steps, right? Small steps to success. So what are those short-term steps that can get us towards our dreams, and who's going to help make them do it? Who's going to help make it happen? And so certainly as the action steps are completed, you want to kind of revisit, where are you? Do we need another set of action steps? How do we keep moving forward? That's key to certainly making a long-term goal achievable. So now it's back to you. Now that we've reviewed this tool, think about, that situation that Jesse invited you to think about earlier. Would this tool have been helpful to kind of address that stressor or get you to think differently about that challenge? And then, what are some of those shared beliefs or tools, communication, problem-solving abilities that you could use, right, to really build your plan. Think about, those strengths that you have, and then maybe the strengths that other people have that can help you address challenges in the future. So I'd be curious to hear from you if there are pieces to this tool that we shared that really resonated with you in terms of approaches to address achieving those dreams or addressing those challenges. So hearing none, we're going to move on and talk a little bit about some resources. And so one of this slide has information, both University of Maryland and University of Delaware Cooperative Extension has kind of a website that deals with farm stress and farm resilience. And the website URLs are listed here, but we also have a QR code, and you can actually hold up your phone and take a picture of the one that the Maryland or Delaware tool QR code and get to those websites. So we encourage you to look at those. They are organized a little. Each one is organized a little bit different. But they have different kinds of resources to address different kinds of stressors, I'll just say. So, for example, financial or family-related stressors or disaster-related stressors or mental health-related issues, there are resources for each of those at both websites. And Jesse is posting them in the chat. Thank you, Jesse. And here are some other helpful resources, especially related to stress. We would be remiss if we didn't talk about, kind of the crisis text line, the suicide prevention lifeline, the SAMHSA national helpline, there's a veterans crisis line, and the farm aid hotline. All of those are really excellent resources for those of you who might want to connect in times of emergency. And honestly, some of these I have in my phone, not so much for myself, but for if I come across someone who is in dire need. And so that if I am available, if I'm the one that they call, I have that right in my phone so I can be there with them when we make the call. So that's a really great tool to have in your phone, just in case. So we want to thank you for attending today. And this is our email and contact information if you need to get a hold of either Jesse or I, and would love to hear your comments or questions. And I'll turn it back over to Shannon and Jesse.
As Maria shared, we want to thank you for joining us today, and you're welcome to reach out to either one of us if you have any questions. And as Shannon mentioned earlier, I believe the second and fourth Wednesday of the month is the Mid-Atlantic Women in Ag webinar. So make sure that you check out the website, and also a huge thank you to the sponsors that went along with supporting this program. So thank you for joining us.